You ever stop and think about how we learn? I mean, there's this whole hidden architecture behind it, a set of blueprints that pretty much shapes everything from our first grade classroom all the way to a professional development workshop. Today, we're going to decode that architecture.
It really all boils down to this, doesn't it? Why does a high school class feel worlds away from a corporate training session? It's not just that you're older. It's a deliberate, fundamental shift in the entire philosophy of learning. So here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to kick things off with child versus adult learning. Then we'll dive into what I call the guided tour, that's pedagogy, and the explorer's map, Andragogy. After that, we'll talk about climbing the thinking ladder, and finally, we'll put all the pieces together into the complete learning blueprint.
Okay, so at the very heart of all education, you basically find two foundational paths. Each one is designed for a completely different kind of learner, on a completely different journey.
The best way to think about this is with a simple analogy. On one side, you've got pedagogy. That's your guided tour. It's all structured, an expert is leading the way, and it's perfect when you're in brand new territory. Then you've got andragogy. That's the explorer's map. This is for the mature learner, someone with some experience who's ready to chart their own course.
Let's start with the one we all know, the one most of us grew up with in school. Let's take the guided tour of pedagogy.
You know, the name itself really gives the game away. It comes from the Greek pedagogos, which literally means leading children. And that is exactly what this is, the classic teacher at the front of the room model, where the instructor is firmly in the driver's seat.
And when we break it down, a really familiar picture starts to take shape. As the learner, you're pretty passive, you're dependent on the teacher. The motivation? It's almost always external. You want good grades, you want praise, you want to avoid getting in trouble. The teacher is the authority, the expert, and the curriculum just follows this fixed, straight line. Yeah, sounds familiar, right?
Now look, this approach has some very clear trade-offs. Its biggest strength is the structure. It's fantastic for building that foundational knowledge, and frankly, it's just easier to manage a big group this way. But the weakness is a big one. It can make learners passive, it can kind of stifle creativity, and you run this huge risk of students just memorizing facts without ever really getting it.
Okay, so that was the guided tour. Now let's flip to the complete other side of the coin. It's time to unfold the explorer's map, andragogy.
Andragogy is the theory of adult learning, and it changes the entire game. Here, the focus is all about being self-directed, about solving real problems. It's designed for people who aren't blank slates. They're showing up with their own life experiences.
And this is where the contrast just becomes crystal clear. The learner is no longer a passive passenger. They're an active explorer, helping to plan the trip. The motivation comes from inside. It's all about relevance, self-esteem, how can I use this right now? The teacher's role completely shifts from an authority to a facilitator, a guide. And the curriculum? It's not a fixed path. It's a flexible set of real-world challenges.
The upside here is massive. It's way more engaging, it's deeply relevant to real life, and it's an absolute powerhouse for building critical thinking. But there's no free lunch. It takes a lot more effort to design one of these experiences, and it really depends on the learners having that internal drive to explore. Without that, well, the explorer just kind of gets lost. So we've got two different ways to guide the journey. But what are we actually trying to achieve? What's the destination? Well, that brings us to our third key concept, which is this universal tool for defining the depth of our thinking.
And this is Bloom's taxonomy. It's a framework that basically organizes learning goals into a hierarchy, from the most basic thinking skills all the way up to the most complex. It's less about how you teach and a lot more about what you're aiming for. Just think of it like a ladder. You have to start at the bottom. The first step is just remembering facts. Then you climb up to understanding them. After that, you're able to apply that information. Now, these top rungs, this is where the really deep learning happens. You start to analyze connections, then evaluate ideas, and at the very top, you can actually create something totally new.
So this basically splits that ladder right in half. The skills at the bottom, remembering, understanding, and applying, we call those lower order thinking skills, or LOTS. They are the absolute foundation. You can't skip them. But the real goal, the whole point of deep learning, is to get to the top half, the higher order thinking skills, or HOTS. This is where real analysis, innovation, and true critical thinking live.
Okay, now for the fun part. Let's put these three powerful ideas, pedagogy, andragogy, and Bloom's taxonomy, together into one single, cohesive blueprint.
And here it is. This might be the most important point of all. These are not competing theories. It's not one versus the other.
They are just different tools for different jobs, all sitting there in the same toolkit. You wouldn't use a hammer for a screw, right? Same idea.
This quote just nails it. Pedagogy and andragogy. That's the how. It's your strategy. Bloom's taxonomy, that's the what. That's your goal. It defines the specific level of thinking, the level of mastery that you're aiming for.
And here's what that looks like in the real world. For a total novice or a child, you're going to lean heavily on pedagogy, the teacher-led approach. And you're just focusing on those bottom rungs of Bloom's ladder, remembering and understanding. As they get to be more intermediate, you start to mix your approach, and you push them up that ladder to apply and analyze. And for your mature, experienced adults, you go full andragogy, self-directed, and you challenge them to hit the very top, to analyze, evaluate, and create.
So you see, at the end of the day, it's all about intelligent design. The secret to great teaching and truly effective learning isn't finding one single magic bullet. It's about having the wisdom to match the right method to the right person for the right goal.
So I'll leave you with this question. The next time you set out to learn something new, a skill for work, a hobby, anything, just pause for a second and ask yourself, what does this moment call for? Am I a tourist who needs a guide to show me the basics? Or am I an explorer ready to draw my own map? Because knowing the difference, that's the first step to really owning your own learning.